Hello, everybody. Welcome to a long overdue. That's actually a little bit accusatory on my part. I just mean literally a long overdue rogue report. Basically, what a rogue report is it's a news video. It's much like any other news video you see on the channel, except it's specifically what comes from the Rogue Core Steam page. So any news posts that come from Deep Rock One or a DRG news report and it comes from the Rogue Core news page or Steam page that's news, is a Rogue report. There are obviously exceptions to this. There have been quite a few exceptions. I think the main ones, though, off the top of my head, is of course Below Decks, which is just Below Decks, its own sub-series, much like this is. And today we're actually going to be covering, I guess we're going to be covering the trailer, although not exactly. We're basically going to be covering this post that's about the trailer, because I'm not actually going to be doing a trailer breakdown. We actually did that in the most recent video, that you can just go watch right now, which is we got loads of new Rogue Core footage and analysed it. I think that's what it's called. So you can go watch that. We break down the trailer pretty early on in the video. I'm also not going to be covering this post, which is a direct recap of the stream. And the reason why I'm going to not doing that is because 90% of what's in here is everything else aside from season 6. Season 6, I literally said that because I read it here. I don't actually know if it says anything. Yeah, it just says what we already know. Anyway, because it's really just about merch and publishing stuff. And we don't cover Ghost Ship publishing, we cover Ghost Ship developed games. And merch is also not really it's not important to what we do either, frankly. What is important, however, is Rogue Core. So this post contains all of the Rogue Core information that we went through on Saturday in a much more condensed and elaborate form. So it's very explanatory, but it's also very concise. It's quite a neat package. It's pretty much everything that you need to know based on everything that has been revealed. So basically, watch this video, you will know everything that there is currently to know about Rogue Core from the most recent On the Horizon stream. And with that being said, I think it's best we get into it. I'm going to quickly adjust my chair because I'm sinking into the floor. Excuse me. Anyway, here we go. Here are all the Rogue Core details discussed in last week's On the Horizon stream. Hello Reclaimers, in case you missed last week's On the Horizon live stream, the pre-alpha teaser trailer for Rogue Core is now live. Take a look above, and like I said, not going to be playing it because we've already done a breakdown, and just playing it in full feels a little bit unruly, frankly. We spent a good hour of the stream discussing all sorts of different details about Rogue Core, so we figured we'd summarise all of that in this post. With the full discussion as a clip down below and timestamps for more specific segments. And remember, I guess this is a note, Rogue Core is still in a pre-alpha state of development. Everything we're showing and discussing here is a work in progress and could change before the game's final release. Although I do think there's a fair amount on display that is probably not going to change. I think there's a lot of very solid design decisions already in place that are probably going to be seen through to the finished product. So anyway, this is the state of Rogue Core, which is its own segment that you can watch on YouTube. I'm going to have a link to pretty much everything I can that's useful, basically, I think, in the description of this video, so keep an eye out for that. Anyway, what's Rogue Core all about? If you're just now joining us, here's the deal. Rogue Core is a first-person, 4-player co-op shooter. There you go, it's a new game, deal with it. It's not a DLC, and it's what Ghost Ship are working on right now. We're still on Hoxie's 4. The Deep Rock Galactic companies discovered the precious mineral Expedite deeper down in the core, and naturally, they want to harvest it. However, all contact was lost to these deep-depth mining facilities in an anomaly event known as the Greyout. Now, it's up to the elite Reclaimers to push through the Greyout barrier and confront the unknown horrors in the core of Hoxie's. Rogue Core is based on the skeleton of Deep Rock Galactic, but it's all stripped down and rebuilt as a darker, more difficult, fast-paced roguelike. You're still dwarves, but you're not miners, you're Reclaimers. And you're the ones sent in when the mining crews can't handle the job. So just a bit of basic sort of lore and developmental background for Rogue Core, sort of laying out the tone and sort of the preface to it in sort of a narrative sense. There were these deeper mining operations that were all of a sudden just completely lost contact with, and that's what the Greyout is. And there's now this Greyout barrier that we have to pass through to reach these now abandoned mining, heavy mining facilities. From what we saw in the footage, the sort of mining operations that were set up just before the Greyout happened were easily the most substantial that the Deep Rock Corporation has conducted. They're massive, thousands upon thousands of prefab structures and just sort of mining equipment, and it's all just left there which means a lot of people died during this. Unless we're going to be saving people, saving workers in roll call, which would be kind of cool. Anyway, here's the first of a couple screenshots we're going to be seeing throughout this. This is one that we did actually cover in the video as well. There's actually only one screenshot in here that is completely fresh, and there's actually one that's also slightly different. But yeah, this is sort of a basic sort of environment. Very, in my opinion, this is very clearly the core biome. We're actually going to move on to the biomes of Rocord now, so I won't actually go into too much detail for fear of repetition. But of course, you can see a new weapon here. Yes, lots of new weapons in Rocord. Don't worry. The biomes of Rocord. In Rocord, you're fighting through mining facilities set up by the Deep Rock Galactic Company. While cave layouts will be procedurally generated, you can expect new set pieces to give the feeling that the caverns you're exploring were once operational work sites. Catwalks and walkways, cranes, floodlights and excavators, etc., etc. With cave generation in Deep Rock Galactic, and I believe this is a link to the Below Decks post, we only had to account for natural forms and organic life. In Rocore, it's a programming challenge to make procedurally generated levels where man-made, or rather dwarf-made, mining equipment is loaded alongside the landscape in a way that looks convincing and deliberate each time. Down in these perilous depths, these deep-level biomes need to feel distinct, more sinister from the parts of Hoxie's you're used to. Right now, our model is to create a central core biome, a unique landscape that represents the absolute core of the planet. Then, we inject elements of this into existing biomes to create a visual effect where the core appears to be invading Hoxie's more familiar biomes as you venture further down. As you get deeper into a run in Rocore, the biome becomes much more and more dominated by the core, which is exactly sort of what we hypothesized based on the footage and what's been said. So rather, what had been said and what had been shown very clearly illustrated this in our opinion, which is why we said it, but I do believe it wasn't this literal. This really puts in perspective they're creating this one core biome, which I think will be quite in-depth, especially when you get down to the point where you are just in the core biome. I imagine it's going to be quite a diverse biome, actually. Full with weird and unexpected features, and of course these features are actually going to be sort of taking root earlier on. I believe, in my opinion, the way this is going to work actually, Rocore, is there's going to be a number of different runs that you can do, and I believe, in my opinion, well, it's sort of just theorizing, I think there's going to be a run for every single biome, basically. I think those are going to be separately choosable missions, basically, and so it would be biome based. And of course, it will start off pretty much exactly as normal before you pass the grey out wall. As soon as you pass the wall, however, I think sort of core accents will start appearing until in the final stage it's nothing but the core biome. I think it's a really cool way to do it. I do wonder if we'll actually see any completely fresh environments aside from the core biome, which is very possible down the line, especially if we're right in assuming that Season 6 will bring a new biome or two, which I think is still actually quite likely. Anyway, you can see all the screenshots and details about the biomes at this timestamp of the full on the Horizon live stream. If you want to see this stuff, I do urge you to check out this post for yourself. As usual, it will be linked in the description. Anyway, there's another screenshot which we will talk about as soon as I have read this segment. Upgrading your Reclaimer. In contrast to Deep Rock Galactic, where you start a mission fully kitted out, Rocore sees you gathering and upgrading your gear as you progress through a run. It's impossible to bring advanced technology through the Greyout barrier, who knows why, so Reclaimers deploy to the mission zone with only a pickaxe, but after crossing the... Okay, so the default Reclaimer weapon is actually gone, but after crossing the barrier, you'll soon find an entrance room where you can pick the first pieces of salvage weaponry and traversal tools for your mission. Right now, the gear selection and upgrade selection mechanics are a co-op process. All players take their picks from the same pool of options. Throughout a run, players take their turns having the first pick of upgrades, as you and your fellow Reclaimers discuss which gear selections make the most sense. Sort of like a drafting system. You'll encounter and earn many upgrades during a run. Some through upgrade rooms, others through abandoned caches and boosters scattered throughout the caves. Some might trigger a fight, so you and your team will have to decide whether the risk is worth the reward. And of course, you'll also be able to turn the wonder mineral Expedite into upgrades. That's where Ellis comes in. Where were we? Anyway, so that was actually not exactly what I expected. Obviously, we knew stuff about how you take turns to pick the first upgrade. It's sort of sequential, so the sequence will be like one person and the next person, person 1, 2, 3, then it'd be like 3, 2, 1, and 3, 1, 2. I don't know. Basically, I think it'll make sense. It'll make a good deal of sense when you get into it. What I didn't expect is the fact that we're not starting with a weapon at all. We were originally led to believe that you would be starting with a Reclaimer pistol. And I would say the Reclaimer pistol has been basically just destroyed It's gone. And you know, it sounds kind of funny when they talk about how the reclaimers aren't actually explicitly minors. They're actually, well, they're not minors. They're, you know, they're something else. They're adults. But then the only thing we're starting with is a pickaxe. It just seems kind of strange. Anyway, so it's cool. So there'll be lots of chances for upgrades. I know what those include sort of optional events like machine event style encounters, and I think that's really neat too. We saw some of that during the trailer actually. So you know, watch the trailer. We also talk about a little bit about Ellis, the drone. I will say Ellis is a bit of a weird name because you know Molly is still you know somewhat derived from Mule, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so the upgrades themselves, which we did look at in quite a bit of detail actually. We tried to sort of dissect what was going on here. We've got a thing up here which sort of tells you whose turn it is at the start. None of the information around the sides that you can't see is actually useful. It's not really unique here, but looking at upgrades themselves, we have sort of placeholder stuff. Like, for example, obviously, that's not Shock Blast, that's just a barter. And we sort of have things that indicate rarities and how they work. So we've got common and uncommon, and like legendary here, I suppose, and that indicates the amount of attributes these things have. We can also see things like weapon subcategories, like for the boomstick, it's got close range, rifle, and standard. I don't know why it's a rifle. And then things like the Cry Can and the Flamethrower have like both have the exact same attributes, which are categories, which are close range, heavy, and exotic. Exotic seems to be pertaining to status effects from what we've seen so far. And there's a couple sort of somewhat interesting upgrades, but not really in this one, except that one of the Flamethrower's attributes is simply just strong, plus strong. Maybe we'll find out what that means. Maybe it's entirely placeholder. Anyway, let's move on to talk about the Ramrod. Aboard the RV-09 Ramrod. In Road Core, your hub area isn't Space Rig 17, it's the good ship Ramrod. The RV-09 Ramrod is still under construction, as you'll see in the preview footage, but we've got the general direction of where we want to take it. Building a spaceship is a different architectural challenge than a Space Rig. Space Rig 17 is quite spacious, with big tall ceilings and most of the experience centered around a big central room. The Ramrod will likely feature lower ceilings and a more compartmentalized layout to really distinguish the feeling of a spacefaring vessel. We're also experimenting with how this hub space can reflect the culture of the Reclaimers. They're no mere miners, and their ideas of recreation might be different than the DRG dwarfs. How does this ship and its set dressing reflect these new dwarves, their interests and their values? So far we've added a gym, and due to popular demand, I've also added toilets. The rest of the Ramrod is still taking shape. Perhaps I'll do a below decks on the Ramrod soon. Let us know in the comments if that sounds interesting. Yes, please do, that'd be really cool. And I think the Ramrod is already shaping up to be one of my favourite parts of Road Core. I think having a wholly unique hub is actually very important. And I mean in the sense of, I don't think that they were ever going to repeat the hub, but, you know, the fact that it's not just like a separate department of the Space Rig, it's a completely new ship that's come into orbit that is entirely crewed by the Reclaimers alone, something that we do also know about it. And it does take on this more submarine, sort of low ceiling, well, you know, that's kind of how spaceships are portrayed normally. So it's more, you know, it's a spaceship, basically. And what we've seen so far, what's definitely very strongly implied, or at least it's sort of stated to be their intention, is that 100% of the Ramrod will be explorable. Which indicates its size. In fact, I think this is actually going to be a bigger hub area than Deep Rock, but only because the Ramrod is so much smaller than the Space Rig. That allows them to do that, and I think everything about it is so cool. It's much more personalised. It reflects the characters themselves a bit more. Having a gym is amazing. I think that's really fun and a really just nice bit of set dressing is what it's going to be. So I'm really excited about the Ramrod. Expect sort of many discussions in the future. I will want to do a full walkthrough of the Ramrod when we get our hands on it. I think that's something I would love to do, like a HUD-less walkthrough if I can. So you can look forward to that in a year's time. Anyway, know your enemies. During the stream, we took it over to art director Jacek. I'm not going to try and pronounce your last name, my friend. Jacek, you're a champ. He's an art director at Ghost Ship, which means he does a lot of good work because, man, is the design of everything so good. To give a live in-engine preview of the things we've been working on. In Road Core, you won't be seeing any more Glyphids. At this step in Hoxies, we're finding a new breed of enemy, a faster, more lethal, and nastier foe. It's worth checking out that live demo at this timestamp of the full On the Horizon stream to see all the creatures in action, but here's a quick rundown of the new creatures just in case. Now, I do urge you to check this one out because even in our video, we didn't have the audio playing. We sort of just skimmed the video on mute. It's the best way that we found to do it because we didn't want to be listening, we didn't want to be hanging on every word because of what the video would have been far too long and far too boring. Some might argue it already is. Anyway, so here are the enemies that were revealed. The Corespawn Crawler, who we already know. You'll recognise this one from DRG Season 5, an agile, powerful quadruped, as all the Corespawn are, able to close the distance and deliver heavy melee hits, and likely turn into sludge on death. Corespawn Creeper, the smaller sibling of the Crawler, and the more versatile and the more vanilla variant. If the Crawler is a Glyphid Grunt Guard, this one is a standard Grunt. So yeah, no more Glyphids. The Creeper is sort of like basically a naked monkey mole rat thing. It looks really funny, but also creepy at the same time. And this is absolutely the replacement for the Glyphid Grunt, much like the Scorcher is so far as a stand-in for the Acid Spitter, I would say. We're not 100% sure if there can be a Slasher equivalent. We saw in the sort of dev test tools list that there was listed a Corespawn Creeper, Guardian and Warrior, which could come to fruition to be the actual Guard and Slasher. We'll just have to wait and see. But the Corespawn Scorcher, this fast-moving ranged unit prefers to keep at a medium distance, harassing you with fireball attacks. Not the tankiest enemy, but hazard in significant numbers, which is definitely what was shown. It's a bit of a pea shooter, so it's clearly meant to be a ranged enemy that appears in sort of large groups, which I actually really like because you can sort of get to this sort of Matrix-esque gameplay with them, where you're sort of just dodging and weaving and slowly bringing the threat level down one kill by one. I always really like that kind of gameplay. Anyway, the Corespawn Clammerhead, akin to a Glyphid Praetorian, this slow-moving beast does huge damage with its claw swipes and has a broad-ranged sonic attack. It can damage multiple players at once. Consider a high-priority target. So this is actually, and they're quite blasé about this being the Praetorian equivalent. But we saw from the most recent issue of the Ghost Ship Dispatch, the newsletter, which will be linked below. I think I'll have that for all news videos in the future. That it's supposed to have this sort of gravity slam attack, or at least that's something that was envisaged for it. I really hope that is carried through to the final design. Well, I mean, I'm sure I've been interrupted more than twice before, but I think proportional to the length of the video, this is the longest it's taken me to record something, probably, in one go. I have recorded things, I believe, that are made up of, separate parts, recorded at different times. This is still technically the same recording, so probably the longest pauses, basically. And do you remember where we were? We just talked about the Clammerhead. So, anyway, Corespawn Edgestalker, the sniper unit of the family. This enemy came from an idea to bring gunfight mechanics to the Horde. Thankfully, this one is a rarer spawn, but its fast-ranging movement, high health, and aggressive ranged attacks make them a major threat. And then it's so yeah, the Edgestalker is like a weird thing. It looks like a Geth Centaur. Geth being actually, I don't know what I'm saying. It doesn't look like a Geth Centaur. It's like a Geth Armature. Hold on. It basically looks like one of these, like literally, except it's got like 4 arms. Is that fucking Daredevil? No, okay. It's like a really cool sort of basically walking turret, which isn't insanely unique, but the cool thing about it is that I guess it kind of mimics the profile of a humanoid character, I suppose. It still has a quadrupedal sort of overall form, but it has a tall frontal sort of body. It's shaped like a centaur, really. And it shoots from the top of its, the tallest part, meaning that part will often be out of cover where the bulk of its body won't be. And while that is its weak point, it's also where it's shooting from. So I think it could actually create some really interesting gunplay, or just combat. I mean, it is essentially a patrol bot with legs in a lot of ways. But it looked like a lot of fun. It's a really creepy design as well. Anyway, the Rafkan Thrasher. Actually, I do think I want to show you these designs if I can. I'll do that in just a moment. So, the Rafkan Thrasher is this is from a new family of creatures, which are the Rafkans, which are seemingly the core flying enemy species, which means they are potentially replacing the Macteras. Anyway, the Thrasher. A new family of creatures. These flying units barrel towards you with a melee ramming attack, like the Brundle always should have done. Sidestep to dodge its charges and punish the weak points, which are on the side of its body. Easily dispatched on its own, but can be a game ender in the middle of a wave. Then there's also the Rafkan Rammer, which is basically like a giant hammerhead thing. The Thrasher's Bully Big Brother. This larger version boasts unbreakable armor, a high health pool, and the ability to plow through terrain. Disruptive, dangerous, and aggressive. Reclaimer teams will need to work together and prioritize the rammer if they expect to survive the encounter. The rammer looks absolutely awesome, and this is why I'm going to try and show you all of these. So if we go to this timestamp, don't need that. Ignore this, please, if you can. It's also got the live stream replay. But yeah, I'm going to try and show you the gameplay of all the creatures, or mainly just them in game, I suppose. So you're probably just about to turn around to see them right now, I imagine. Alright, go on. There they are. So here we have the Corpspawn Crawler, as you saw in Season 5. Right next to it is the Creeper. There he is, Monkey Mole Rat. Next to it is the Scorcher. We have the Clammerhead with the big gorilla fella. Edge Stalker, like I said, looks like a Geth Armature. And the Rafkans. Awesome looking creatures. The fact that this big bastard here rams you and can destroy terrain is honestly so cool. It's like an airborne oppressor. I guess, Dreadnought hybrid, because it digs. Oppressors do dig. I'm an idiot. Anyway, let's talk about classes. Also, we're working on plenty more creatures, which will be revealing in due time. Very cool. I'd like to see more, especially bosses. But you can consider these the base army in Rogue Core. It's not like the Glyphid family. Well, the Rafkans aren't the Glyphid family. The Corpspawn are definitely the Glyphid family. I definitely want to know if the Rafkans are completely replacing the Mactera or not. Potentially not, which is why I guess I would have to accept that they are sort of part of the Glyphid family. Therefore, the base army is split into more than one species, which is actually kind of cool. But we'll see. Probably won't be too long till we see either. Playable classes in Rogue Core. Rogue Core brings new playable classes, more than 4 of them to be exact. Right now we're working on 5, but we're still working on testing and prototyping them. There will probably be even more than 5, but we're a long way from having them set in stone. For now, we're ready to show off 2 classes. And I do believe there's going to be more than 5 on launch, and probably around 6 to 8, I would say. And there will be more added post-launch. I think that's the kind of game we're looking at. A numerous selection, more than 4, because it needs to inherently break through the threshold of the player count, I think. Definitely want more classes than max players. And I think there will be more added in future updates. I think that's absolutely a thing we could see. Depending on how big a class really is, we could see updates featured around classes or featured around bringing like 1 or 2, maybe. We'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, here are the 2 classes we're workshopping. The Slicer, equipped with a devastating arm-mounted plasma blade. The Slicer offers extreme close-range crowd clearing, this signature melee attack. The blade cuts clean... I'm so sorry. The blade cuts clean through terrain as well. We're still workshopping the pool of possible upgrades that will allow you to experiment with a proper melee build on this one. So yeah, seeing it in action, it's basically like an energy sword. Actually, very reminiscent of the Omni-Tool blade from Mass Effect 3. It looks really cool. A lot of damage, honestly, like even just individual enemy. The amount of damage it does to individual enemies seems very high as well. And I'll show you both of these classes in just a moment. This was to the Falconeer. This Reclaimer brings a wrist-mounted flying shock drone, which you can send into battle to deliver shock attacks to enemies. It's your elemental battle companion, able to help with single-target or crowd control builds alike. We're also experimenting with how you can upgrade this drone. Could you get it to do remote revives? Yeah, really leans into things that sort of been suggested for alternate engineer equipment, like drones that attack or drones that revive and things like that. Sounds really good. And this is one of the beautiful things about Rogue Core, especially them allowing themselves to make much more singular classes in terms of what identifies them. The classes are really only identified by a single piece of equipment, therefore opening up the possibility, obviously, for lots of classes, but more specifically, and might seem trivial to actually separate the two even, much more just ideas for new equipment, class-based equipment, in the form of a bunch of new classes, so that involves drones, like a melee slicer attack, maybe some kind of mutant transformation. That should be really cool, although that's not particularly I don't know how you put that on a wrist. Anyway, as it stands now, a class is defined by special ability. These abilities stem from some equipment mounted on the Reclaimer's left arm, often some form of wearable tech or cybernetic implant. Implants could be cool. Most, if not all, will work on a cooldown timer and may come with a range of class-specific perks to support your ability. During your run, you can expect to come across upgrades that will supercharge your ability and really let your class choice shine. I think the classes look really cool. Obviously, we've only got 2 so far, but I think there's a lot of room to go with these, and I will attempt to show you them right now. Although we're probably going to get an ad, so let me just find things a bit more precisely. Okay, now allow me to show you the Reclaimer Slicer with audio intact.
The guy that has like a plasma blade on his arm.
Yep, you can see big plasma blade.
Slices in front of him.
It's going to do the attack.
Sends out that plasma and kills enemies.
Like that.
So yeah, it looks very cool, very powerful. I like sort of the crosshair that just basically just stretches across the entire screen. And you saw the amount of damage too. I can imagine getting upgrades that sort of send out a breach cutter style projectile, or have the slice occur all around you in like a 360 fashion, things like that. Anyway, let's take a quick look at the Falconeer as well now. Right, here it is.
Right, it's just our interpretation of the word Falconeer. So
right, let's get to it actually. Oh,
I have a
jump the gun a bit.
Reclaimer with a drone on his arm.
And you can sort of see it automatically attacking the stationary enemies.
Call it back.
But you probably want to see it attacking some core spawn. Probably the best.
At which point it
bit
will
of
select
footage.
targets automatically. You can make it change targets, and it does 2 things, right? It can of course help you kill things, but it can also give you crowd control, so, as well as bringing in.
There you go, very fun, very powerful. You can sort of call it back and point it around. I assume basically it will work. You'll send it out with the button that activates your ability, and I guess you would hold that button to go into sort of a control form or control mode, where that's when you point stuff out and select targets and things like that. Either way, looks very cool, lots of fun. I mean, both of these really just sort of tickle the brain as to what could be possible with the classes in Rogue Core. Anyway, let's do, I guess, the FAQ, or FAQ. I guess it is technically FAQ, but FAQ stands for Frequently Asked Questions. This is a fan Q&A, so this is actually the questions that were asked and then the answers to those questions. So I'm just going to try and blitz through these. So let's do it. Okay. How come this is a standalone game and not just an expansion DLC to Zero Galactic? Answer. It started out as an expansion, as we know, but as we got deep into working on it, we found that we wanted to do a lot of stuff that felt way beyond the theme and feel of DRG. In other words, we felt more creative and more excited when we didn't have to keep making sure every idea for Rogue Core fit with the DRG legacy. Another big factor was early access. It's a big way for us to get community feedback and fine-tune everything, and you can't do that with DLC. No, you can't. Very fair answer. How long will one run in Rogue Core last on average? We're still playing around with that. At the moment, we're considering having several possible lengths for a run, sort of like you can have with missions in DRG. At the moment, Rogue Core runs a little longer than DRG missions, but they're also harder, so you die more often. This one's still a bit mushy and very likely subject to change. Going with a tactical it depends on this. Although, Aaron, I must say, you still could have included the numbers, which I believe were from half an hour to an hour and a half. But then again, citation needed there because the numbers weren't included. Question, can runs last forever, or can you win each one? Right now, the runs have a definitive endpoint, after which you've beat it and have successfully reclaimed the mining site. Again though, it's too early to say anything for sure here. I don't know why. Now this is actually, I don't want to go on a rant here, but it's always been, I think, my biggest, forgive the fact that I'm being critical at all, okay? I mean, I know a lot of Deep Rock fans don't like that kind of thing. It's always been my biggest problem with Ghost Ship, that it takes them too long to be definitively decided about something. And I don't understand why, because in my opinion, making hard decisions early on is the way to a better and more refined finished product. Instead, they kind of leave things in flux for seemingly as long as possible. And it's kind of antithetical to how I would see, but then again, you know, that's armchair development, so I need to be careful because that might be really just incongruent with the way that games are made. But in my opinion, they do seem to not make hard decisions early on. In fact, they rarely seem to make hard decisions at all. And I think it would benefit them if they did. This is the kind of thing that, in my opinion, should be decided by now. And that also goes for the length of the runs too, because how else are you meant to structure game development if you don't know sort of the parameters that you're working in? You know, not in my opinion, not everything should be in flux. But then again, I apologise. It's a bit of armchair development. I acknowledge that, but I'm just sort of speaking my mind. Anyway, that's not really what it's about. So let's move on. Will the dwarves have the same voices as in Deep Rock Galactic? That's the plan right now, yes, but they should have quite different personalities. And I still hope that character customization is sort of deepened a little bit, where we have like very customizable individual dwarves, sort of in a classless sense. And therefore maybe voice should be done via a pitch slider, than like a preset for the classes. What will the Rogue Core price point be? Will there be a bundle or discount for existing Deep Rock Galactic players or owners? Too early to say for sure, but the intention is to put it at a similar price as comparable games like Deep Rock Galactic. Yeah, I think that would make sense. I think, I'd be actually a little bit worried if Rogue Core was priced lower than Deep Rock Galactic. Ideally, it would be worth more. As in literally worth more. Like, it justifies a higher price point, ideally. How will ammo be more limited in Rogue Core? How will resupplying work? Right now, it's more limited compared to base DRG. We don't have nitro in this game. See, okay, there you go. That's actually an interesting sort of hard decision that's been made early on. Instead, you'll be able to find ammo crates throughout the run. But we're also playing with other ways to top up, like skipping an upgrade in favour of an ammo refill, which we saw in the menu above, or getting an ammo crate consumable as equipment. We're looking at a similar approach to healing. Pardon me. And there will still be red sugar, so there you go, a couple sort of actual early definitive decisions. Although they relate to more quite granular in-game elements rather than big sort of structural development facets. I don't know. Either way, we know that there will not be nitro, but there will be red sugar in Rogue Core. How big a role will terrain manipulation play in Rogue Core? Cage traversal is still a big part of Rogue Core, but the pacing in this game will be different. So you're likely to be moving more quickly and not staying in the same spot. But you can expect all the familiar DRG traversal tools to make a return, and hopefully more. I hope. I believe that was always the intention, but we'll see. Since it is a roguelike, what kind of power progression can we expect to keep between runs? Is it class or account based? Rogue Core will have permanent progression. Some of that will be upgrades that benefit all classes, and some will likely also be tied to specific classes and items. But this is an area that we really haven't dug too deeply into yet. They don't have anything too big or specific we can promise here, and that's fair. We'll just have to wait and see. With the co-op upgrade system you've proposed, are you worried about it causing infighting between players in random matchmaking? I am. We considered that. Yeah, it does have the possibility to generate friction, but that's also the point. Hopefully, folks will be able to use the system for the whole team's benefit, and share upgrades in a way that best boosts each player's own build. Sometimes that might mean you pass on the best upgrade, so that it can give an even bigger benefit to your teammate, who might get more from it. Unfortunately, no matter how wholesome you think your player base is, people don't work like that. It really sucks, but they just don't. People are inherently greedy all the time. It's a really frustrating facet of human nature that's just kind of just true. Humans don't stop being greedy, no matter how sort of generous they think they are. Anyway, you've got to win as a team, so it doesn't make any sense for one player to hog all the goods, but they will if they can. I think when we come to playing it ourselves, especially when we're showing it to you, I think we'll try to avoid being like that. We'll try and be considerate, but that stuff kind of goes out the window, because wanting yourself to be more powerful is such an enticing feeling. That's almost quite a scary thing to say, but it's true. All that said, this system is a work in progress, like all the rest of the game. Depending how the game shapes up and the feedback we get from internal play testing and the closed alpha, it may also get some tweaks and improvements. And I think it is actually an interesting approach to an upgrade system. And I can see its DNA definitely making it to the end, but I can also see some notable changes being made along the way as well. I think that makes the most sense. Anyway, are you doing seasons for Rogue Core, or is it a one and done type of game? Well, first of all, there will be updates, so I wouldn't say one and done at all. We can't say for sure right now. If you look back at Deep Rock Galactic, we never intended it to be a sort of live service game. It only became that after we experienced all the positive feedback and demand for something like that. With Rogue Core, we're taking the same approach. We're just trying to make a fun game right now. So technically, I would say that does imply one and done, in the sense of the game will mainly continue based on feedback and response. Although I can't imagine they won't have any updates planned for launch or for post-launch, but that kind of makes it make a bit more sense where the focus would go on to Season 6, which would give them a lot of time to collect information and feedback about Rogue Core to help them dictate the sort of direction of updates after launch. Anyway, will there be boss fights in Rogue Core? Oh yeah, we're working on a couple of them right now, and I'm really excited to see the boss fights. I want to see something crazy, almost demonic, like core-dwelling creatures, but obviously a core-spawn dreadnought equivalent. I'd love to see a Rafcan boss too, like a giant, like whale-type creature that we can go inside of. Something like that would be amazing. Anyway, do the runs in Rogue Core get more difficult based on time or by depth? Right now, both, which, makes sense. I don't think it's rare. It's actually kind of rare that they do it by time. Survivor likes are the ones that do it by time usually. Right now, both. It gets tougher based on how long you stick around and also how far you progress through the run. Actually, so that does actually tell you that it will get tougher if you just stick around, which definitely leans towards the faster pacing that they've implied will be a part of Roko's DNA. So you'll definitely want to be on the move. Will there be neutral wildlife in Rokor, considering how hostile these depths appear to be? Not now, no, but that also might change. And I'll say this. It would be really interesting to see some really weird and off-kilter neutral creatures. But I would say for the most part, carrying over a lot of the deep rock ones to populate the area before the grey out wall would make a good deal of sense. And those sort of more peaceful creatures just completely disappearing once you go through the wall would create a really cool and harrowing effect of a place sort of devoid of kindness almost. I think it would be a really good idea. How dependent is the gameplay on getting upgrades? Is it feasible to make it through a run without upgrading? No, or at least it's not designed to be. We're designing this gameplay loop to focus around earning and selecting upgrades. That said, we're always blown away by how good some players are, so somebody's probably going to figure out a way to beat this thing using just their pickaxe. And I'm probably not going to do it just a pickaxe, but I can definitely see myself attempting a no upgrade run at some point. Stay tuned for that video. Will there be cosmetic packs? How would you handle that? Probably, but again, too early to say. We just want to focus on making a good game first. We'll think about this stuff after. Now, cynical bastard I am, I wonder what you mean by after, right? Because you really should have figured this stuff out before launch, at least. I understand early access kind of implies that you don't have to, so I do acknowledge that. But Rokoor should absolutely launch for at least a supporter cosmetic DLC pack, much like Deep Rock did. Something that, a golden paint job pack, something like that, and Survivor did the same. So that should at least be in place, and I think it's absolutely justifiable to bring over a similar approach to cosmetic DLCs for Rokoor as there is for Deep Rock. Will stages of each run have the chance to have mutators and modifiers like in DRG? Yes, and we're working on some new ones, which is fair. Mutators are the kind of thing where that racks the brain of oh, please, come on, bring them over to Deep Rock. Whereas things like the enemies and whatnot, I definitely do not think should be brought over back to Deep Rock. I think that would really muddy the waters. But mutators, actually, to be fair, the mutator pool in Deep Rock is actually pretty lush, really. So maybe not. Can we expect cross progression between DRG and Rokoor? No. Going to speak my mind here. It's a really stupid question. Sorry, I'll stop there. Will there be beer in the game? Most likely. They're dwarves. When are we going to have early access for Rokoor? Right now, the plan is Q4 2025. So in a year. We also need to plan for a closed alpha, which is slated for Q2 2025, which are both sort of important pieces of information to take into account. So that means the closed alpha will launch any time between April and June of next year, and the actual early access launch will occur anytime between October and December next year, which are both relatively later than what was initially expected, even after the delay. As in, even after the delay that got announced with the On the Horizon that covered Season 5 earlier this year, there was a window given, at least for the closed alpha, which was Q1 of 2025. However, it does seem to me, in a way, that the closed alpha being a bit later isn't really impacting the early access release, I would say. And that just gives them more time to flesh the game out before it goes into any member of the public's hands. Hopefully, we will number among those who get access to that closed alpha. Obviously, difficult for us to not talk about it, but it also means pretty definitively Season 6 will be in 2026, and that will be the next Deep Rock update. There will not be another Deep Rock update since Season 5 up until Season 6. There will continue to be there will continue to be holiday events. There will probably continue to be patches whenever they seem relevant. And I'd also wager that the next anniversary or even multiple anniversaries will bring a couple extra goodies, which usually seems to be the case at this point. But right now, the fact that they're still working on Deep Rock at all, or they will be, is really kind of stupid. In the sense of it's ridiculous, because it's a feature complete game, and the studio has taken that into consideration, and has therefore decided to move on to a new game, which they're well within their rights to do. Yet they still plan on going back to that old game, which genuinely gives me a lot of optimism for Season 6, weirdly enough. I think when you look at Season 5, and you look at the gap between Season 5 and Season 6, and then you look back at Season 5, and you consider the fact that Season 5 really does feel like it was made with the time between Season 4 and 5 in mind. Season 5 is, in my opinion, a DLC-sized content package given to us for free. And I think we're going to be seeing something similar, if not more extravagant, with Season 6. You know, they're going to have so much time to take in and absorb and come up with ideas and absorb feedback from the community. That I think Season 6 is actually going to really surprise. You know, it's not going to be worth the wait if you are actually going to be if you are making the mistake of waiting from Season 5 until Season 6. You know, if you're putting a lot of value on that, you shouldn't be. You should be forgetting about Deep Rock for now. Think about Deep Rock when Season 6 gets officially announced, you know? Think about it then. Either way, I do think it's actually going to be really surprisingly big and really cool. But then again, Road Core will be that as well. If not, well, it will be more so as well. So Road Core is really what we should be looking at the moment, because it's the next big thing. All that being said, let's just round this out. That's the scoop on Road Core for now. Expect more news and details in the month to come. In the meanwhile, if you've got any burning questions, feel free to drop by one of our weekly Ghost Ship dev streams to ask us. Catch us on Twitch and YouTube every Tuesday and Wednesday. So have they actually properly moved the dev streams to these days? I guess so. Either way, that is literally all the information there is about Road Core, just put into one 40-minute video. This is the longest news video I've ever done. No surprise. And there will be many more to come based on whenever we get new information about Road Core. You will also be kept up to date with the Ghost Ship Dispatch, which is a newsletter for which there'll be a link in the description for you to sign up if you want. There'll be plenty of channels sort of delivering us news about Road Core as time goes on. I think especially when we get into the new year, I think we're going to start to see some stuff, and it's going to get really cool, even cooler than it already is. And it won't feel like we're being sort of abandoned, you know. It already feels like the dam has broken. Seeing so much Road Core stuff already feels really cool, but there will be so much more to come, and it's just going to keep flooding in and feeling like a more and more developed idea in our heads, something to really latch onto and to really get excited about. And honestly, the fact that that will happen already excites me. The fact that we're going to have more to get excited about makes me excited, which is stupid. Either way, that's all for this ridiculously long news video. If you enjoyed this or found it useful, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to see more of this stuff and you want to stay on top of everything to do with Deep Rock and Road Core, then also please hit the bell. And if you're feeling extra sexy, when you become a member as well. Anyway, that's going to be it. I've got to go and 100% Mass Effect 2, I think. Anyway, toodaloo.